Hello, and welcome to Pace to Purpose, where every step leads youth, families, and communities toward hope, healing, and wholeness. I'm Nomi Pace Wallace with Nomi for Youth.
And I'm April Pace Williams with Journey to Live Complete. And we're excited to walk this journey with you.
So, tune in each week as we move hearts and minds towards purpose.
One pace at a time.
Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Pace to Purpose. I am Nomi Pace Wallace, and I am here today with
April Pace Williams, first of all, and I'm so excited because we have a special guest.
Drum roll, please.
Right. A very special guest. We're talking about families this whole month, and who better to have on the show but my husband?
Yay!
And his name is Greg Williams. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
You want to share a little bit about yourself, Greg?
Yeah, I'm married to April. You heard that?
Yes.
And Nomi Pace Wallace. Yeah, is my sister-in-law, and we're all from Louisiana. I'm originally from Colfax, Louisiana. Went to school there, and then graduated from Grambling State University. Met my lovely wife in between her going to Louisiana Tech and me being at Grambling, and then graduated Grambling. Did a couple of years of high school teaching, and then entered the military. So I'm a 22-year retired Army veteran that is currently residing in Houston and working for Children's Memorial Hospital. And together, April and I have two boys, LG and CJ Williams.
Yes.
Great.
And we also have businesses, sir.
We do. We have, so we have Williams and Williams Investment. We have 1911 Cigars, Pair One LLC, which is the bar.
Yeah.
And April has her business, Journey to Live Complete.
Yes. And this is the definition of a power couple. A power couple. They are that. Yes.
Thank
So
you.
I am so glad to have both of you here today. And as April said, we have all month long been talking about family. Yeah. And the reason being is, we are leading up to our family reunion. So we figure what better subject than family to talk about this month. And last week we talked about navigating challenging relationships within families.
Right.
This week we are talking about breaking generational patterns in families. Boy, oh boy.
Nail biter.
Yes. Because that's almost like, well, where do you start?
Right.
Where do you start? Well, first you have to start by recognizing the pattern. And that sometimes can be difficult.
Right.
That can be difficult. If you don't know that this pattern, especially if you don't know it's dysfunctional.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way that we've done it all of our lives. That's how Mama and them did it.
Exactly.
So.
I think so. I think we get so embedded in an environment that it becomes normalized to you. That's what you're used to and accustomed to seeing, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So the trouble is having to figure out which weeds to water and which weeds to pull up.
Exactly. And when you say that, okay, you have to be able to discern between what's a good pattern and what's a bad pattern.
Right.
Because you think about breaking generational curses, okay? Curses. That's my language.
The topic is
they can be curses.
Right.
But breaking generational patterns.
Right.
Because you can have good patterns and you can have negative patterns.
Right.
So I think about our biological father.
Right.
He was the first child in his family, first person in his family to go to college.
Right.
So that is breaking a generational pattern.
Right.
So there are many examples of it that some are obvious and some are not so obvious.
Right.
You're absolutely right. If I had to think of one right off the top, the obvious one really is really poverty in families, right?
Yes.
Everybody knows poverty is there, right?
Right.
You don't have to have a whole bunch of discernment about
Right.
the fact that your family don't have a tremendous amount of resources
Right.
Right.
per se. That's obvious, but there's also those other ones where there's patterns of behavior that's really been passed down from generation to generation that is not really easily identified unless you do have some type of spirit of discernment, or you've left that situation and then came back to it and you're like, okay,
Right.
Ooh.
that's not
Yeah, that's not how we
appropriate.
operate.
So you've
Right.
been kind of manipulating me all
Right.
these years, and here I
Yes.
am.
Mhm.
I'm thinking it's just a normal pattern, but no, it's really manipulation. And when
Mhm.
people are feeling manipulated, sometimes they don't know that it's happening to them until they get away from it and
Right.
step back into it.
And
Right.
be able to be more objective.
Right. I say for us, right, moving away, being in the military, you get exposed to different things, right? You
Right.
develop different communication techniques. You start identifying personalities in people, and you start really just learning who you are and how you process information and how you want to receive information. And
Mhm.
so stepping away from my family and then looking back over my lifetime being raised in it, I was like, I saw some behaviors that was centered around, you know, manipulation existed in such a way where it wasn't truly detrimental, but it was the small incremental things that really built up to someone manipulating you to get out of you what they want to have,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, identified that. I had a family member. His mother did that quite a bit with him, and so it's tough when you're in a single parent family, when mom is the mom and the dad, to
Mhm.
really see that. And so it was him and I talking about certain things like that, and we really talk about how there were parallels in terms of how I was raised too. One of the things you have to do is really be um, not necessarily critical, but be aware and not be
Mhm.
in the spirit of judgment, right? Because just as we're talking about generational cycles, there may be a cycle that your family member probably was exposed to that's just
Right.
accustomed to that
Right.
dynamic, right?
Yeah.
They didn't know
So
they needed to
it's
Right.
pull that
going
weed up.
right,
Right.
right. They
Right.
didn't know they had to pluck that weed up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have smaller families in smaller towns. They don't get outside of those
Exposed.
confines a lot.
Right.
Exposure,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
And so
Exactly.
it's no fault to them. It's just
Right.
that they that's what they have been exposed to all these years,
Right.
and that's their normalized
Yes.
way
Right.
of behaving, right?
And not even aware that there are options for other behaviors, you
Right.
know?
And so there's different ways you can handle it. You can handle it head on, or some may require a little bit of finesse, right? So
Mhm.
let's take, for instance, the manipulation piece. Once you start pushing back on the manipulation piece, they're not accustomed to getting that response because they've been conditioned throughout the years
Mhm.
to, if
For
I
you to
do this to
just go along.
Greg gonna do this. But the moment
Mhm.
Greg start pushing back,
Mhm.
Mhm.
then it could be
Yeah.
a confrontation, right?
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so, but you have to be consistent with that, and we have to teach people how we want to be treated, because
Right.
otherwise they will continue to minimize your
Right.
feelings.
Exactly.
Right.
We have to
That's
set boundaries. We have
set
to set
boundaries.
Set boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm glad that you went down that road in talking about how there's sometimes our elders don't know what they don't know, right?
Mhm.
And so just like some of the things that we've passed on to our children,
Mhm.
no one is perfect. So there's some things that we haven't necessarily broken.
Right.
Okay. Right. So how though, this is where some finesse comes in, like you were saying. So how can we lovingly confront those unhealthy patterns and behaviors without dishonoring our elders? But how do we tell them, look, this ain't right? You remember what you had done to me back in
Well,
1992?
well, I think that's part of it. We don't bring up we don't bring up the past because that is ineffective.
Right.
In fact, that is counterproductive,
Right.
because that's just going to snowball into something else.
Something
But we
else.
do just what Greg said. We stand our ground, we change our behavior, we set our boundaries, and
Mhm.
still lovingly, sometimes you can't express in words what you're trying to say. What you need to express, you have to express in behavior and
Yes.
still love them the same way. But
Yes.
because when you change your behavior, the other person, they have no choice but to, if you stand your ground and you change your behavior, set your boundaries, then what someone else does is their business and should not affect you.
Right.
Right? It
Right.
shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't. Sometimes, we're human.
Right.
We're
Right.
human. But when we take care of ourselves, and I'll say this, because there are times, I can think of times when, say, one of my children maybe set their own boundary with me, and I'm like, ugh, but deep down, I'm kind of proud of them.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm proud of them,
Exactly.
so I might not say it, and maybe I should have, but inside, so you can imagine that maybe that's the same thing that is going on with our elders,
Right.
that even though they might not express it, inside they get it.
Yeah.
They get
Right.
it, and they're proud.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's hope.
It's hard. It's hard for, once you are set in a certain way of doing things, and the older I can attest for myself, the older that I get, the more accustomed I am to doing things the way that I have done them.
Right.
And so making those changes, setting those boundaries is a task in itself.
It is.
Right. And so we have to understand that everyone cannot necessarily make those changes as quickly as we might want them to, or as quickly as we might.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So,
but I think what you could do is I think you can pick and choose, right? I think you can kind of put your toe in the water a little bit and test a less significant issue with them to see how they would respond to that. And then, garner some trust and some understanding and some healthy communication, and then gradually get to some of the bigger issues that are not or upfront, but is going to definitely require some finesse, because people's feelings and emotions can get wrapped up in it, right? So establish, a communication that's healthy with smaller issues that's not that significant, and then garner the trust from them, and then gradually build up to some of the bigger dysfunctional behaviors that you have identified. Now, I'm not a medical or mental health professional. And so it's even difficult for even the folks that are in that field to do this very thing that we're talking about.
Oh, definitely.
And here we are, lay people trying to navigate that. But if we pay attention to who our audience is and who we're talking to and how they respond to information, and then some stuff you just got to put it out there on the table. Because no matter how much you put
that's true.
and how much you try to communicate the most effective way, they're going to receive it the way that they're going to receive it, and they're going to react the way that they're going to react. We just have to have our 10 toes down to say, this is my boundary, and I'm communicating to you. This is how I've been feeling. I'm letting you know I haven't let you, I did not make you aware of this in the past.
Right.
However, now I want to communicate to you that when you do this, this is how this makes me feel.
Right.
So if I retreat back from you, you need to know that's why.
That is why. Exactly. Yes. So we've been talking a lot about the generational patterns that affect us as far as elders onto us. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like to shift towards how do we, moving forward, exhibit or be an example of changing negative patterns. How do we do that? How can we do that? So please, everyone, think about that. And we'll talk more about that when we come back from the break. So stay with us here on GSSL Radio. And welcome back to Pace to Purpose. Well, before the break, we've been talking about breaking generational patterns in families.
Yes.
Before the break, I did say, think about what actions can we take to make that happen, to break generational patterns. And I'll just say that what comes to my mind is growing up, there may have been certain things that I wanted or needed when I was growing up. And so as a parent, when I became a parent, there were things that I made a conscious effort to deliver to my children. Something as simple as a hug or I love you or a kiss, routinely, regularly.
Right.
I made a conscious effort to do that. And because I did recognize it as a pattern that wasn't, there wasn't a lot of
Forthcoming.
affection. There wasn't
Right.
a lot of affection when I was growing up. And be that, I can't say good or bad, that is something that was learned.
Right.
Something learned and that was passed down. But for me, recognizing in me that was something that I would have liked, that I feel like I would have flourished from, I made a conscious effort to supply that to my children. So
Right.
that's an example of, what can we do to change generational patterns that, aren't necessarily positive.
Right. I would say for me, making sure that we teach our children both the successes and the failures.
Mhm.
A lot of times, what we tend to do is hide the faults, so to speak, right? We
Mhm.
tend to not want to share. And if there's anything that I do regret in my parenting style, is some of the time a lot of things that we called ourselves protecting our children from,
Mhm.
really we were protecting ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
We were
I
protecting
agree.
ourselves from
Right.
having to share that information with
Right.
them.
No, I was gonna say that's really the guise of the devil. The
Mhm.
devil don't want us talking about the things that have tripped us up or
Right.
tripped our family members up, because the devil is strategic in everything that he does.
Yes.
Right.
The less we talk about the things that means, I mean, yeah, celebrate the wins, right? That's easy. That rolls off our
Right.
tongues like anything else. But the problem is we don't talk about the things that may have tripped us up in the past,
Right.
and that
Mhm.
continues to trip up other family members within our family, right?
Mhm.
Right.
The more we communicate that in a loving and affectionate way, not in a way of you demeaning the other person because they
Right.
have whatever. It's just they need to know is like, hey, just be aware you might have, some alcoholism in the family. You might have
Mhm.
some addictive behaviors in the family.
Mhm.
You might
Right.
have some mental health issues in the past. So when you
Right.
start feeling a certain way, there may be something that you may need to go get some help, because this is something that's within the family and it has been in the family, and it's
Right.
time for them to
Right.
recognize and try to move beyond that, right?
Right. And can
Right.
you imagine that if families did that, if people and families did that more often and more frequently,
Mhm.
that would change the game tremendously, because we sweep it under the carpet, we don't talk about it, and then boom, it's a problem. And now you're rushing and you're putting out this fire, that fire, trying to figure out how can we resolve it? How can we help it? How can we but really and truly, had you, like you said, Greg, from the jump, from the very beginning, disclosed, like, okay, for example, you teach your child to look both ways before they cross the street so they won't
Mhm.
Yeah.
get hit, right?
Right, right,
That's
right,
something you don't just send them out and let them walk across the street.
Right.
right.
But when it comes to life and major issues that could trip us up, we send them
Mhm.
on out there. We send
Yeah,
them
Right.
on
we
out
do.
there. We don't have them enough. We don't
Right.
have and we don't have them in a timely enough manner. If we have them, sometimes it's because
Reactive.
it's reactive. Exactly. It's
Right.
reactive.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that reaction may be too late.
Right.
It
Right.
may be too late.
Unfortunately. Right.
Yeah.
So we're like you said, we're sending them out there and we're rolling the dice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then the other part of it too, I think you said something about we don't have them enough. When you think
Mhm.
about it,
The
is
conversations. Right.
conversations, right? And not only
Mhm.
conversations, but how much time did we spend with them? from
Right.
them going to school, being at school 8 hours a day.
Mhm.
They play sports, that's another 2 or 3 hours a day.
Right.
They're being influenced from more people than us.
Right.
Exactly. Definitely.
And so it's important to have those conversations, those meaningful conversations,
Mhm.
intentional conversations, because those influencers out there in the world could be more than us if they're not rooted appropriately.
Right. So now, okay, how can we do this with our adult children? How can we help them to break cycles that we were unable to break before they came along? How do we influence that once we've recognized it?
Right. And the word you used, influence, that's all we can do is influence them because they're adult children. We
Right.
can influence and we can introduce tools and resources.
Mhm.
You know, we can introduce resolutions, we can introduce ideas, but once they're adults, it is very difficult,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
to drive that train, you know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And one of the things I could say that is, and my pastor Will said this to me all the time, is that those tactics and techniques are good, but you have to. I think vulnerability, offering up you have to be vulnerable to them.
That's
Is if
exactly
you can be
where I was
vulnerable
going.
to them, you can reach them.
Right.
Right.
That's true.
And that's exactly where I was going next is apologize. Once you recognize that a cycle or pattern that you were unable to break and you recognize that it has influenced your children,
Take accountability.
take accountability
Yeah.
and say, hey, you know what? This is on me.
Right.
And I want you to be better. So
Right.
I'm recognizing that this is, I could have done this differently.
Right.
Right.
I was
Absolutely.
responding, I was doing things based off of what I knew how to do, just like my mama and them.
Right.
But now I know better.
And
so I want you to be better.
Right.
Hey, remember we was at the shop last night,
Uh-huh.
and so we had a couple down there, right? And he's a Hispanic gentleman. His daddy was border patrol, but his mom came. She don't have paperwork, basically.
Well, she is.
She does now.
She does now.
She does now. She does now, right? And so the gentleman shared with us his story of meeting his lady friend, right? But he's asking his mom and dad about, hey, how did y'all meet? And they keep blowing him off. And then April got to a point where April, what did you say to him?
So this is the key. First of all, you have to understand that he said, these were his words. He said that he was a mama's boy. I love my mama and she can't do no wrong. He just holds her up on a pedestal. And so he kept on talking about how no one would tell him how they met. And even when he would ask his mom, like sometimes he would take his mom, he said, we'll go to Vegas sometimes and, I'll get her a drink or something and we'll be talking. Right. We'll be talking and I'll be like, Mom, how did y'all meet? And she'll just, she would just laugh. Right. And so I said, okay, let me help you out real quick. I said, you just said that you or a mama's boy and you hold her up on this pedestal. Maybe their story is similar to the one that you and your spouse have, and maybe it's something that she don't want you to know.
Right. Clearly.
She don't want you to know. Maybe she don't want you to see her in that light.
Right.
And if
the light bulb came on.
The light bulb came on, and his face, he was just like, oh my goodness. I went inside.
I never thought about it like that.
Right.
Yeah.
He hadn't thought about it. And I went inside. I came back out. He looked at me. He said, go back in. He said, go back in. You messed it up for me.
You changed his whole life.
I changed his whole life. I'm so sorry. But now you don't have to walk around wondering anymore.
Right,
Leave that alone.
Let it go. Let it go.
And some stuff you're going to have to let go. It's some stuff you're going to have to let go.
That is the truth. Now, there are some things that you're just going to have to let go because there will be no accountability. There will be no apology.
Right.
There will be none of the things that there should be.
Right.
It's not coming. So you have to get to a point that you're at peace with it and have an understanding that, because God doesn't make any mistakes.
Yeah.
So if I don't have to know,
because he has it under control. God got it.
He does.
He has
does.
it. And so, what spiritual or emotional tools can help to break those cycles of pain, silence, or fear? Like, what can we do?
The first thing that comes to my mind is prayer.
Right?
You know,
Mhm.
we have to stay in prayer. And let me just say this right quick. I have my grandsons here this week. They've been here since Wednesday.
Mhm.
And I was talking with my oldest, Elijah, and he said, you know, people have three faces: one that they show to the public, one that they show to like their immediate family and close friends,
Mhm.
and then the one that they show only to God.
God.
He said, and that's the most important one.
Mm.
That is the most important one.
That's wisdom.
Yeah,
That's really
yes,
good.
wisdom.
yeah, it is.
That's wisdom.
He said, and that relationship, that personal, private relationship with God is more important than your public relationship with God. God provides us guidance and, you know, and wisdom to be able to recognize our dysfunction. In that personal relationship with Him, He provides us the ability to be able to identify what is dysfunctional as opposed to, you know, pseudo normal, what we have normalized, but it's not normal, it's dysfunction. You know, so you find that you can better be able to find that in close relationship with God.
Absolutely. And another way to do that is combining that with fasting. Fasting from things that you know trip you up and talking to God during that time to help you get through that fast.
Elijah, he got here Wednesday. He was on a fast that he
See?
ended that night at midnight.
Yeah. I would say for me too, to that question is, you know, when you're faced with something like that, that's confronting you, I think one of the verses that sticks out to me is James 1:19. And it's, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. You don't have to react in that moment.
And not fall into behaving, of behaving as they behave, because that's been the example that we've had. So therefore, you know, we exhibit the same behaviors that we have seen exhibited, you know, in our presence.
And the scripture that goes along with what both of you all are saying is Proverbs 15:1. And that's a soft answer turneth away wrath. But grievous words stir up anger. So we have to expect that if someone is coming at you and you respond with that same, you match their energy.
Energy transfers.
Energy transfers.
And that's a challenge. So are there any other tools that we want to suggest to the listeners?
Therapy,
there you go.
Because therapy can help you to recognize some of the patterns that you aren't able to recognize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give a big thank you, brother-in-law, for coming on the show today. And thank you to the listeners for showing up every Saturday at 2 p.m. to listen to Pace to Purpose on GSSL Radio.